Joining us now with reaction, Democratic strategist Doug Schoen, Fox News contributor Joe Concha, and a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, Victor Davis Hanson. Doug, I want to start with you. The president has been firm in saying, I'm running. And I have said, I don't see a universe where President Biden doesn't run. But I did see those two pieces, the Axios piece, and then I see the Politico one, that it's an ever-present weight, Hunter's legal troubles. So do you think that there's any chance he pulls back from his run?
You know, Kayleigh, a month or two ago, I would have agreed with you and said, no chance he's not running. And I think in his mind today, he is running. But that being said, with poll numbers as bad as his numbers, with an approval at 33%, and with the impeachment inquiry having been opened and his obvious cognitive challenges, I think he'll have a family meeting over the holidays, and whether he decides to run or not ultimately, I still think is an open question. So I think this is an evolving story, and let's stay tuned and wait till January.
Yeah, very interesting. Victor, I want to come to you because I want to give a word of warning to viewers. The polls haven't always been right. There was supposed to be a red wave. There was not. When you look at Trump and the voters he's bringing in young voters. He's bringing in all kinds of new voters. But non-2020 voters, in the CNN poll, he's winning by 26 in Georgia and 40 in Michigan. But you got to make a non-2020 voter show up in 2024. You've got to get out the vote.
Yeah, but I think it's a little different, Kayleigh. I think he's in a doom loop. It's not just the polls. None of his agenda is polling. Anything he's done is polling 50%. He's got some really problems with the Biden family conglomerate. Finally, the news of their skullduggery is it's unassailable. And then, in addition to that, he's got, I'll be frank, he's in severe cognitive decline. And when you add all of that up, corruption, decline, low polls, and unpopular agenda, the result is we're in ennui. There's lethargy now. We've ceded the Red Sea over to the Yemeni terrorists. You can't navigate it. We've had 125 attacks on our installations in Iran. And then we're not doing anything. There's no border. It's not that it's porous. It doesn't exist. And then they're infighting to take up that vacuum in the White House, because we hear that Kamala Harris thinks we should be more sympathetic to Hamas, or that people are saying we've got to outlaw natural gas, but on the same time we've got to produce more gas and oil than we ever have. So because of this decline and this vacuum, people are freelancing around him with different agendas that are not compatible, and overseas people see nothing's getting done, and they're taking advantage of that vacuum, and they're our enemies.
That's right. I mean, that's a good summary. And Joe, for Joe Biden to win, though, he needs to make Democrats come home. When you look at his approval rating, which is almost in the 20s, shocking to say, he's lost 12 points among Democrats. Do you think they come home?
That's the thing. He's losing among black voters. He's losing among female voters, independent voters, young voters, all the people that helped him barely win in 2020. They are leaving and probably not coming back, because the thought process is, Kayleigh, will this president get better with age? Will he be like Bill Clinton, the comeback kid? Well, no, he's not wine. He's not going to get better with age. And then when you think about the version of Joe Biden as an 86-year-old in the Oval Office, if he won a second term, it's hard for any Democrat, really, to imagine that. And no president, Kayleigh, has ever been reelected with an approval rating below 40%. And as Doug pointed out, we're now seeing several polls putting him at 33%. So apparently political rock bottom has a basement. And by the way, have you seen the president's schedule today? And I'm not just cherry picking, because this is a lot of days. 10 a.m. he got the daily intelligence brief, because terrorists apparently like to sleep in on Fridays. And then 12:30 he had lunch with the vice president. And that's it. That's when the weekend began. Despite everything happening in the world, people see this, they know it, and you cannot spin it to the media. Even they are starting to reject this notion that Joe Biden can serve another 4 years. Kayleigh.
Yeah, Doug, how do you reverse that perception? That's a very difficult thing to do when the American public has their mind made up.
Well, I think Joe Biden gave us a hint, Kayleigh. He said he wouldn't be running but for Donald Trump running again. I think the playbook is to run the same campaign that was run in 2018, 2020, and 2022, which is a negative, full-out campaign against Donald Trump. Because while it pains me to say as a Democrat, I can't disagree with what Victor said about how people feel about his performance and how objectively his performance should be judged. The only saving grace for Biden is in some of those swing states, he's within the margin of error, and Donald Trump's numbers personally are almost as low in some of those states as Joe Biden. Yes, he's trailing. It may be a death loop, but it can be a death loop for both candidates, which is what I think the Biden strategy would have to be.
Victor, I only have a moment here, but do you think Joe Biden's the nominee come next summer?
I really don't, Kayla. I don't know how the mechanism will transpire, but I think people in the Democratic Party understand he's not cognitive able, and the idea of Kamala Harris assuming the presidency maybe before his term is over and running as incumbent is one of their worst nightmares. So I'm not even sure he's going to finish his term.
Yeah, that's a scary thought. Joe Concha, Doug Schoen, Victor Davis Hanson, thank you.